my friend. Today we're going to be talking about the mandolin. We are going to talk about a little mandolin theory and fretboard knowledge, but what I'd love to do is show you how I use the mandolin, a little bit of music theory, to play some fun melodies. Most music is based off of something called a triad. Now, for those of us who use the music terminologies, it is a triad composed of two dyads, a major third and a minor third. That chord construction, when you're looking at a... What? I just grabbed a brand new pen. Here it is. Oh, so silky black. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Throwing this out here. When you have a key signature and you find yourself playing a note like a C, an E, and a G, these notes are stacked, meaning note 1, note 2, note 3 have a major third for the first two notes and a minor third for the secondary one. Meaning, you can't see this, can you? I will write with the flat part. Minor third, major third. So, where we're at right here is we're talking about two concepts of a chord construction. When we play a major chord, the major chord is considered a uppercase Roman numeral. Thusly, out of the 7 possible notes that are available for every key signature, we have a major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and then diminished. Our chord construction for that is a major third on the bottom, and then a minor third on top. When we go to the next note, or the note right above middle C on the first ledger line, it becomes a D note. Then we have an E and an F, G. G is actually the line of the treble clef, because the treble clef itself, if you were to just do the treble clef and get rid of the top half here, you would see that it clearly makes like a lowercase g. That's how I remember it in the beginning, that this line is the G line. G, after G we get A, and then the middle line is the B, and then lastly, we have a full octave. So inside of a scale of, let's say, C major, we would have C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So what I'd like to talk about is how the chord construction of what we would consider the mandolin, being mostly in the key of G, because the chord that it makes from the tuning of the strings resembles that. The strings on the mandolin have 4 notes, but they are played with 2 strings. Thusly, the lowest one is the G, we have a D, an A, and an E. And for those of you who love music, you can see already how a GBD would be a G major, and it's very simply said that this is the same tuning that a violin has. So what I'd like to do is finish the chord construction of these distances or intervals of a 1, 3, 5. But we're going to talk about it in the key of G. G, A, B, C, D, E, and then G has a sharp in it. Its relative minor, E minor, the 6th of the chord, also has that sharp. They share a key signature. So when we play the notes on the mandolin, you betcha, we're going to be playing notes that are on frets that give us these tones. Now, from the clef, if we were to just draw that out again, we can put our treble clef here on the G line and then put our sharp on the top line, because G, A, B, C, D, E, and then F is the top line. Key of G major, we say G sharp. So when we play this, you're going to hear G in relativity to C. Most of us learn a little bit of piano. That's why it's good to lay it out vertically. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C give us the triads of C major. The aforementioned C, E, G, major third, minor third. When we're talking about chords, we are talking about dyads. These 2 notes, when played in succession, give you a major third, a minor third, minor third, major third, major third, minor third, minor third, and then resolution for major third. When we play these with the other dyad, that determines one thing for one very special chord. This B diminished in the key of C has the stacking of a minor third and a minor third. unlike a major, 1, 2, 3, 4 minor seconds make up a major third. And then 1, 2, 3 make up a minor third. You can see now how when we move this to the key of G, we get G major, A minor. We now can't play that F because it would not have a minor third plus a minor third. We want a major third for a B minor. Our C major, major fourth. Now our D minor can't be because there is no F natural in the key of G. There is an F sharp. D major. We have an E minor as the relative minor, meaning all the notes inside G major are in E minor. It's that F sharp. And then our last chord is the F sharp diminished. Minor third, minor third. And that resolves to yay. So the concept of these triads and stacking the diatonic notes give you the name of the diatonic scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Many people know it as the solfege. This happens to be just something that was created around the same time that we were looking at the newer version, or the mandora, which is what we're going to talk today about, the history. So the major third right here, if we were to flip those, we have the minor third on bottom and then the major third on top. That gives us a minor chord. And then the only other one represented here that we were talking about was the diminished. That would be a minor third and a minor third, giving you the diminished. These are the constructions of them. These are the chord chart symbols: a triangle, a hyphen or a minus sign, and then a circle, which inevitably can have a little slash through it to give you a different type of diminish. The only other triad that we use that is not explained here through the eyes of the major chord is the augmented, which, if this is major third plus minor third, this is minor third plus major third, this is minor third plus minor third, somebody that's intuitive will go, oh, well, what's a major third plus a major third? When we do that, what we're going to do is find ourselves playing an augmented chord. Let's use the key of G major, 1, 3, and then sharp 5. Minor second, minor second, minor second, minor second gives us a major third. And then minor second, minor second, minor second, and minor second gives us a major third. All together now. That's built up by that dissonant. When we have notes that are 1, 3, 5, oops the doodle. When we have notes that are 1, 3, 5, they are much easier to hear as consonants because that's what the overtone series means. So here we go. If we were to take all of these notes and then form all of our triads as a result of that, what we would see on the staff is giving ourselves the G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. On the mandolin, we're going to show that today so you can get basic scale diatonically, ha 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 ha, just being able to go in G, and then be able to move that and shift that around. Seeing the instrument as having like little quadrants onto which patterns arise. Now, what we're going to talk about when we look at the tablature, I'm only going to draw 4 lines. However, each one of these are representative of the 2 strings that compose our G, the D, the A, and then the E. Whence doing this, I'm going to put my nut, and then we're going to see this as having frets. For those of you who play different instruments and you're watching this as a tutorial, right on, good for you. It's always great to learn a new instrument. When doing this, I'm just going to go up to 12 because after 12 it repeats itself, right? I feel like that's 12. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, at which this repeats and becomes the same note, and all this starts again. Yes, I say again now. So that's what our, oh, I'm sorry. I got the OCDs. This is going to drive me crazy. It's got to be a little bit more in the middle. And that little squiggle is going to bother me too, but what are you going to do? All right. If we go from our C and find ourselves going C, D, E, F, G, we find ourselves upon this note. this note itself, when we play it as a whole note, can be long. I'm just going to play these in examples as quarter notes. I'm going to fill in my note head here, and I'm going to put a stem. That gives me my G note. That's a quarter. Right above a G is what? We have our A. Putting that note right here, filling that note head in, and then putting a stem. You betcha. I'm making my stems a little shorter. Usually I come up above the line here, but I don't want to make this all crazy. When we get to the middle line of the treble clef, G, A, B, we have the option of putting the stem up or down. Just remember our notes are going to look like this. If our note looks like this and has a stem, we are rotating it this way, which means the final creation is going to look like this. PD, DP, whatever you want to think it as, but notes are not called D and P. They just have the orientation of the stem on the left or right. I'm going to put this one on the B line, and I'm going to put that stem up for this one. And then the next note, when we go to it, the C, I'm going to put that stem down because it's then going to be going in order. It's easier to read when the stems are doing that. Hey, Jeff, how you doing, brother? Hey, thank you for watching the rudiment things. I don't know how long you watch them for, but those 40 rudiments, when people watch them at night, have really significantly increased the watch time hours. We are so tickled. We are halfway there to 3,000 hours. If we can get 3,000 hours, that means all the funds that YouTube would give us for all these informative channels would actually start monetizing and making a little bit of pennies, I guess. I don't know how it works. But I do know any income from this would go right back into the channel. I teach 3 days a week in Hilo as an instructor. Right on. Thank you, Jeff. And I teach as an instructor, and I do labor. I'm slowly transitioning out of labor because I got hurt last year. I finally got a little bit of movement back in my hand, and I want to play music and teach for the rest of my life. So that's my goal in life. If you want to help support that, share this channel maybe. But yeah, Tuesdays I really enjoy. These are theory concepts. Remember, ask questions. And if you get stumped, and then I could help to answer that. If I don't know the answer, I can ask my teachers. Again, thank you, Jeffrey, for being awesome. G, A, B, C. When we go to the next line, of course, I'm going to fill it in my note head. Notenkoffer. Sprechen Sie Deutsch? When we go up, we continue the process. Take special note that I'm not drawing any of the accidentals on the actual F. I don't need to put an F sharp here. It's already given in the key signature. The only time I would use an accidental, like a sharp, double sharp, natural, flat, double flat, is when I want to alter the notes of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. This is what a full octave looks like. This is called a P8 or an octave. This is called our prime or a P. The second note is going to be called the subprime or the subtonic. We're just going to call it the ST for subtonic. Our third one, it determines major or minor. Therefore, when we play a third, as in a triad, 1, 3, 5, the idea of taking this note and then flattening it by one step is called a diminished. If you diminish anything, you are flattening it by 1/2 step, the smallest distance in the increment of the western ear. When we do that, we get a G minor because the tonality, as we see, switches those intervals. It's no longer a major third and a minor third. Whoop-de-boop. It's a minor third and major third. So we'll be talking about that later. Again, I'm going to put here, this is the median. This next one is called the P4. This is a P5. This is the submedians. This one is going to be the one we call the lending tone or the leading tone. They both have the same initial, so we're going to put LT. And then the last thing is going to be that P8. Now, I'm going to erase this in a second. I know it looks a little jumbled. But what we were truly talking about is how to see these notes on the fretboard, and that's what this is really about. Finding a little bit more creativity for fretboard knowledge. So what I like to do is just show these through the form of every single note and then go through the process of circling out the notes that have the notes of the G major scale. Watch me now. I'm going down. We can do both enharmonics if we want, but it gets a little cluttered. So what I'd really like to do is just use sharps because the key I'm dealing with right now has one sharp. So when I say G, G goes to a G sharp. Then we have an A sharp. We go to a B. We have a B sharp. We have a C sharp. We have a D, D sharp, E, E sharp, and then F sharp. and then we go back to our 12, which is going to be our G. I know that these seem weird because most people are not used to calling a B sharp a B sharp. It's a C note. And then an E sharp is an F. So it's kind of awkward to see these kind of concepts, but when you start doing them over and over and over again, it becomes much easier in theory. Cool. Next line, D sharp. Nice. E, E sharp, F sharp. G, G sharp, A sharp, B, B sharp, C sharp, and D. My voice sounds like Frank Zappa when they're newfound Takunga. I can't go off on Zappa. A sharp, B, right? A sharp is a B flat. B, B sharp, C sharp, D, D sharp, P. It's hard to write from that side. E, again, E sharp, which is otherwise an F, F sharp, G, G sharp, and then A. And then lastly, our E line. For those of you who play a little guitar, this is a great exercise too. Pick up an instrument, learn all the notes on the fret. It just will help you play the guitar if you know how other instruments work, because it's all essentially the same. Using tertiary harmony or divisions of intervals, minor second, which is the smallest increment, forms that little dissonance we're talking, and then a major second, and then a minor third, and then major third. I don't know if I can play that left-handed backwards. E goes to E sharp, or F. Then we have F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, B sharp, C sharp, D, D sharp, and E. Now, for those of you who are a little confused too, all these sharps are all equivalencies. The reason why they are equivalencies is because when we use a circle of fifths, C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, and C sharp all have equivalent flats. C can also be considered B flat. C can be considered B flat. If we play G, we could actually consider that as the aforementioned double flat. A double flat is a G. When we move around the circle of force, going this way rather than this way, which is called the circle of fifths, we find ourselves going 4 notes to F. Now these divisions from C to F, they say like this, right? C, D, E, F, 4 notes. But hypothetically, we're counting those minor seconds. The distance betwixt those two is always going to be the same. Therefore, when we go from B to F sharp, you might think, well, B, C, D, E, F, 5. But the idea is, you need to be able to understand that we already have a key that has F. We need an F sharp because the distance between that will be the 7 minor seconds. When we're going in the circle of the force here, what we do is we look at these intervals as being such. What key are we going from C to F? Here's our C. So C to F, yeah, perfect fourth. When we go and put that F down here, oh, perfect fifth. We have equal temperament, which makes it really convenient because it allows us to do things inside of key, like playing around with all the notes in the key of F, and then thinking of C major as being a dominant 7. That's a little too much for chord theory as far as like the piano goes, but today's not about that piano now, is it? It's just about this mandolin. We're going to get into a little history, but I wanted everybody to kind of see this layout of the fretboard, and then I wanted us to see a representation of the circle of fifths, going through the process of counting down, and then we find ourselves playing something called enharmonic equivalencies. C sharp is a D flat, G flat is an F sharp, and then C flat is a B. You can also keep going C, D, E, F. When we play F flat, that is an E. F, G, A, B. When we play B double flat, oh, I'm sorry, wrong sim. B double flat, we get an A. These are called hypothetical keys. Really, sharps and flats and accidentals are primarily used in a minor chord setting. When you have a minor chord setting, you are talking about taking the chords we're talking about here, a major chord, flattening the 3, 6, and 7 intervals. Meaning, rather than having G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, we would actually have G, 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 A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G. Taking away one of these notes, it then reveals that G minor has the same key signature as B flat major. One of the really cool things we can do with the circle of fifths is go over 4 notes. C to A. Well, A and C share the key signature, no sharps and flats. In the key of G, G and E share the key signature. So that minor note that you get out of G major, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, is the same thing as playing and singing from the G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Just depends on where we're starting our melodies or our tone, and then the ear fills in the rest. This is our circle fourths or circle fifths. This is how I use it to understand where I am in tonality and what chords inside of a song sound towards the center of a key or a family. In the key of G, our family chords are going to be, the first 3 are major, the next 3 are minor, and the last one is a diminished. That's what it looks like for me. G major, C major, D major, A minor, E minor, B minor, F sharp diminished. Boom. That is basic music theory. If you have any questions about this, there are a plethora of resources online. I hope you dig my channel. Check out the playlist that says Circle of Fifths. And then every Tuesday, I do something like this where I hang out and answer questions. So the idea is, if I try hard enough, maybe we will reach a couple people that are trying to get into a new instrument. Maybe we will inspire people to play 4 or 5 hours a day. No, I'm just joking. 30 minutes works. Or 5 minutes if you're just starting off. 5 minutes a day really changes the way you see the fretboard. If you could do what I just did, whether it takes 5 minutes or 2 days, this is a great resource, but you want to make sure that you're writing or you're putting these concepts together in the right form. There's really a real bummer when you learn something and you realize you learned it the wrong way. So having said that, I'm only one person. This is my interpretation on what I've learned thus far from a little bit of college, a lot of life lesson, and then having instructors that took the time to explain these concepts to me. I took all that information, boiled it down into a little bit of bite-sized portion, and this is what I'm trying to do to demystify instruments like the mandolin. So, having said that, I'd like to rearrange the camera I've got and move it towards my really cool tapestry. Do-do-do-do-do, and play a little mandolin for you here. So, mandolin has a couple different really cool concepts and a couple really cool kind of like history things. What I like to do is be able to explain just a few of those so it gives a little bit more context to the whole process of the mandolin. Now, the mandolin has 8 strings, but out of those 8 strings, only 4 notes, as we put on the board. When playing these, we have a low note, a middle tone, another high register but middle tone, and for anybody who's just starting out, tuning 8 strings is rather hard, kind of complicated. However, the idea is as such. The complication goes away after you realize a couple things. When you tune your instrument, if you tune it the exact same way every single time, it will always have the same feeling and it will always tune to the same sort of tone. What happens is we play the same frets generally over and over and over again. If you put too much string on the tuning pegs when you're winding it, it sometimes affects the way that the strings resonate. Therefore, if you put too much, sometimes it gives you a different sound. If you put not enough string, wound, those tuning pegs, wow, that was hard to say, it eventually would change the way that it sounds on a very minute level, but you will hear that. And then lastly, when you are in tune, you should have a G, D, A, and then an E. When we play on the mandolin, we look at these fret markings as being the G as open, our first finger on the first fret having a G sharp, then we talk about an A sharp, and a B. Cool. Now when we go all the way up to the 5th fret with those same fingers, we have a B sharp or a C, C sharp, D, E. When we go up, we have an E sharp or an F, F sharp, and then we have our resolution to our G. G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, E sharp or F sharp, and then G, onto which it all starts again. When we were talking about G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G, we're simply talking about the open note, skipping the G sharp and playing the A, skipping the A sharp or the B flat and playing the B. Notice how I skipped a finger and a fret. When we go here to the C, that's our next note. Above that is the open D. We also skip a fret, the first fret, play the second fret. We then skip the F note and play the F sharp. Again, realize that I was playing with my first to third finger. 2 to 4, 1 to 3 always is going to sound good. And when you play these patterns over and over, what tends to happen is you learn chords. G, B, D, 1, 3, 5. You find those notes. Here's a G. Here's a B. And then your D. Well, cool. A sharp, B. E sharp or F, F sharp, G. So when you play the G, D, B, and then another G, you get a G major. This is actually one of the first chords that students learn because it's generally what most mandolin music is played in, centralized tuning. Now, a little back history on the mandolin. The mandolin has been around for 1,200 years, hypothetically. We don't really know, but we carbon date certain instruments that have been found throughout history. Some of the earliest of which are made out of shells of animals. Notably, there are a couple that are made from the back end of human skulls. What it did was it took concept of the mandolin. This is the current day mandolin's basic setup that we have. And I'm going to tell you how this body style evolved, everything from the ribbing on the inside to the way that it is flattened, almost like a violin. These changes really didn't happen or take place until the 1800s, 1840 to 1850s, when the mandolin was popularized in the Americas for the Western ear. However, the mandolin is a modern member of the lute family. Now, the predecessor of the lute is the aforementioned turtle shell. What that was you would have some that have like turtle shells or like skull caps from animals, and then maybe even a human skull there. It would have been covered by some sort of skin, mainly like a drum is, which that gives the idea of the banjo itself being an African instrument of a skin shaped over the back of a elongated gourd, which acted as a plectrum. It produced more sound. So basically, the lute dates back to like the 18th century of having the most common recognition through music. But some of the Spanish and most of the European, especially Italy, were the forefathers and the families that lived there, created these concepts and worked on different engineering styles for these instruments. Inevitably, when the immigrants came to America, the concept of how these shaped America changed depending on how people wanted to play them or with whom they were playing them and with what type of music. Choral unions and ensembles didn't really take form, even though the instrument was here for 150 to 200 years, until it started making an appearance in some of the aristocratic circles. There were mandolin clubs and different creators, and then there's different people that played huge roles in it, like Don Giovanni or Luigi Bassi, All of these people should also be you know, looked up, checked out. They played hard classical music. Bach, Mozart at the time was huge for serenading. So, long story short, the Napoleonic Wars had a huge change on things because the mandolin itself disappeared. Unfortunately, many of the makers and many of the places they were made were destroyed. Therefore, the only real true version comes back to the Viennese family, I believe. Now is kind of like they used a lute gourd that was shaped, and if those of you don't know what a lute is, the lute has a gourd back with ribbed backs and ribbed sides. The bridge itself was floating, unlike, or not floating, unlike our current mandolin or violin, which has the floating bridge. It's actually kept down by the tension of holding it back behind here and here. Now, on the mandolin, you can see how the middle part of the wood is actually higher than the rest. This piece is actually a flat piece which is pressed down into the sides and then held together by a bracing. The original ones were a lute that where the headstock came up, it split at a 90-degree angle. From that 90-degree angle, you were able to pinch down the strings and keep them at a certain tension. And most of the lutes of the time had a lot of creative detail in the sound hole rows. There were patterns put over the top and etched out. There were bindings being added. Until certain points, there was only like the sound hole idea for the current mandolin, until these sound holes were actually put in by a creator, and we'll get to that in a minute. The idea is Italy, big. The first lutes that we had, musicologists, they put examples of these from the 4th century, which means those of you who understand the Industrial Revolution would understand that our modern day metal strings that have been mass produced were not a thing. To be able to create instruments that had strings on them or resonating factors, we had the intestine of animals that were braided together like hair, 1, 2, 3, twisted, left out in the sun, and then whittled or used our hands to work them down. This all took thousands of years because the concept came from making rope or fishing wire or some sort of usage of these straps that all cultures did. So here's the real cool thing. All different cultures had different ways of creating something called gut string. Now, our original gut strings, if you watch the ukulele version of this, not the mandolin, but the ukulele, doing a little history, talking about the instrument, talks about how sailors found that having a 4-stringed instrument, much like the mandolin, tuned differently, had a high G string rather than a low G string to represent the same kind of concept of G, C, E, and A on G, C, E, A on the ook, and then here we have the G, D, and then the A, E. So our concept happens with our tuning pegs and the headstock being able to contain the strings or the gut strings. Persians changed that a little bit by having a poking hole through the top of the headstocks and then having a tension bound. The Sassians, or an almond-shaped kind of like lute from the Bactria, came to be known as the barbat, or the barbud, yeah, which was used and developed later in the Islamic world for different types of melodies, but mostly played by troubadours and the Moors, the Andalusians. It visually came from just being already known as the lute from most of the Roman culture, Greek culture. During the 8th and the 9th centuries, many musicians from across the Islamic world flocked to Liberia. There were many different players that took concepts from there back to their hometown, and then I would assume that the newer version of the mandolin we've seen in the 1800s was influenced hugely by the 14th century lute makers. Having said this, the lutes became a little bit more detailed oriented. They had many different fine woods and a lot more distinctive nature of the artist playing on these and having a little bit of fun with it. Oop, I see a comment. I'm sorry, I need to jump up. Sorry, perform a color playing. Whoa, that makes sense. If you're a music nerd like me and you go check out some of the videos on the history of this, You will find they wear gloves. They have different units that have been owned by different people throughout time. Some of the most famous ones that we know in America were brought here by immigrants and then donated to different museums. So they are actually being kept up by musicologists and people, historians that keep the music alive, which is wonderful. There's actually many instruments you would not think about how they actually were created, like the flute or the recorder. That's a whole huge, amazing journey. So the development of the mandolin in the 21st century refers to the 8 strings of which we were talking about. As we were talking about, we would call such an item like the Napoleonic mandolin, because that's where it turned into like the American bluegrass mandolin. That's where I wanted to go with this. The mandar, or the mandora, or the mandorin, these are all names using to refer to the mandolin. It eventually coalesced into being called the mandola, and then the idea of our traditional mandola turned into our mandolin today. Musicians that use it for all sorts of different types of music, and the first metal strings that were introduced were kind of influenced around the 1810, 1850s. It's hard to put a time frame on it because the first known one came out in circa 1835. And before that, there was a little bit of a different connotation. Now, this is it's more like an opinion. I hate saying that, but I've heard other people kind of stress it. The original mandora was more of an introverted instrument rather than an extroverted instrument, because it was based off the tunings of the standard lute. And the mandolin, from having like 4 strings which are doubled, the lute itself ranged in strings depending on what type of music was being played. And most of it was like house music or church chapel music or chamber music, it wasn't for the mass public, it was for a very defined group. And most of that was kind of lethargic and kind of like melancholy. So the songs that were created from these particular instruments gave us the feeling of having like more of a minor tonality, but they were specifically tuned to their own key. So the idea is each lute was kind of different. Each development of the style was different. And there were other luthiers that changed this after the 1850s, 1860s on. Raphael Calesi, Luigi Embehegre, changed in the idea that when we raised the bridge and we didn't have a flat basin over a fretting or just a neck, we added the addition of having the tension. By raising these up and having the individual frettings, which never went this long, this is a new creation because it was trying to mimic the idea of the guitar. When the first wave of these mandolins, or the mandolino in Italy, or the resurgence of the mandar or the mandola after the Napoleonic Wars, 1815, it came to have a second age. That would expose it as being a popular instrument rather than being something that was niche. This happened, I would assume, during the the beginning of exhibitions. One of the most famous one was from the 1875 or 1878 Paris Exposition, onto which many different people got together and took the ideas and the concepts from what they saw at the exposition back to their home countries. There were students that learned how to be luthiers, and then it leads us to what I like to talk here. The newfound sensation of the mandolin happened after the 1880s and then the 1890s, when it finally made an insurgence in the United States, late circa 1880s. The popularity of the mandolin at its height was in the early 20th century. Today, the mandolin has been used in not only folk, bluegrass, traditional music from many different cultures spanning the globe, but it also makes an insurgence in current day rock music, which is really kind of cool. There are short scale mandolins, there are long scale mandolins. We would know this age as the 19th century to the early 20th century as the golden age, unto which I think the second golden age, or the third golden age, is precipicing upon us right now. The aftermath of these two different ages led to thousands of people who have learned this instrument, bring it back to their own culture within their own demographic, and then teach others. The idea that nothing is set in stone and then it keeps moving is wonderful as far as music goes, because being able to play a certain set of 7 notes on an instrument which is tuned leads us to be able to see patterns. Well, these patterns are more easily defined by listening to different types of music. So if you own a mandolin and you've only been, I don't know, fortunate to play like bluegrass music, try to check out some Irish Celtic music. Try to check out some jazz mandolin, or maybe even check out some rock and roll bands that use the mandolin, like Led Zeppelin or String Cheese Incident. There are many different rock and roll bands which are country, folk, funk fusion, which are pretty amazing. And then the idea is try and find a mandolin group where you are living. Lastly, I want to show you what a G major looks like. We can move different notes to get larger scale chords, or as we would call in the music industry, inversions. This one, when we put a finger down, relies on us knowing that G, A, B, C, D is the same D as up here. So the first thing we recognize as far as having quadrants is that these quadrants have like notes. When we play the 7th fret on the lowest string, the G, the note above it is the same note. It becomes a D. Likely when we play the note above it on the D string, we get an A right above it. When we play that A string, again at the 7th fret, we get an E. So when we play the first 2 notes as a G major, we can see this as being a major. Remember the aforementioned when we take the G, B, D and flatten the 3rd, it becomes a minor? Well, this was the B. Now that's a B flat. Between these 2 shapes, you have 99% of these. Check this out. G major, when we play that same G major in a secondary fingering, and then a 3rd fingering, and then move that 1 note and use our, as we said, 2 and 4 finger, or 1 and 3, 2 and 4 feels good. Move that up, and then bar that whole 2nd fret. You get an A minor, composing of an A, C, E, and an A. Nice. Moving up a whole step, we get a B minor. If we go up a half step and convert this into a major chord, by either removing that finger and keeping it central, or keeping it there and just closing that off to play the 7th fret, you get a C. Again, up a whole step goes to a D major. If we go again up another whole step and turn it into a minor, we get a E minor. And then moving it up gets our last chord, the minor 3rd plus the minor 3rd. Now, all of these chords construction help us to be able to see the mandolin as having an open strumming that you can use. What we like to do, I like to play this one, but it's a little hard on this mandolin. It's not the best. That's our highest note there. Many different ways to play these chords. All of them are called inversions. Like this A minor doesn't need to have this as being the root note as A. You can actually move your root notes to other places to play like maybe the E here. So that would be a first inversion. Whenever you play triads and you don't use the A as the root and you put it somewhere else, you still have the same 3 notes. Therefore, what we've gone through here is seeing that the mandolin has gone from a part of being of history spanning 1,200 years, and that the notes we choose to find on the mandolin, like the G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G, when we keep going, all these notes fall into a couple different patterns. That's what I would like to leave us with. If I move the G up, and let's say we go G, A, B, C, we can play that with our pinky and say C, open D, E, F, G, open A. We would have our B, and then half step to C. That gives us our 7 notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. But just because I'm starting on C doesn't mean that the note of G isn't in the key of C. G, A, we have a B. Oh, that's B flat, my bad. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Understandably, this is a lot of information, but daily, if you check out the mandolin and you spend 5 minutes a day learning a new chord, like an A major or a D major, you learn a couple different ways to play that G major, and you learn a couple different ways to play that D major, you will find yourself hearing, oops, different chords, like a D major, maybe a D7, which also feels like an F sharp diminished, and then a 1 chord. Once you can nail down G major, A minor, B minor, I'm sorry, C major, D major, E minor, can I nail them? There are many different ways to play the F sharp diminished, half diminished, full diminished. I prefer to just like kind of play a quick D7 and rock back to the G. It's the easiest way to remember a 5 dominant. And if none of that really made sense, you can check out any of the music theory playlists, or maybe go to the Circle Fist. And then the thing that I want to leave us on right now is we're going to be doing just showing the patterns for the mandolin. Hopefully this will help knock years off of your playing. If not years, I don't know, days. So I'm going to take a marker and show you what it looks like. What we're talking about today is called a major scale. It is an Ionian scale. The modus that was created uses the Greek term, or the city-state, of Ionian. There is Aeolian. Those are the two most common ones that we learn. They're called major and a minor. So from these two major and minors, I'm going to show you both. The first one, we have G goes to an A goes to a B is going to go to a C goes to our D goes to an E, and from the key of G major, we had an F sharp. So we're going to play the F sharp and the G. This is what do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's what it looks like. So when you play this, you can play the G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. When you move this up anywhere, you're just moving that pattern. If we were to play it at the aforementioned C, we could play C at the 5. 7, we'd play our D. We'd go another whole step to get the E, and then a half step for the F. Above your first finger, now on the next string, G. A, B, and then C. Do you notice how this pattern is the same as this? We're just incorporating that open note. Therefore, if you can play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the key of G, then you most definitely can play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in any key. The idea behind this is, when we keep going, we have an A, a B, a C, a D, an E, an F sharp, and a G. Now, what I've just shown you right here are all the possible notes that are between the 1 and 5 frets, utilizing the E, the A, the D, and the G as open strings. If want, you can also take this pattern and move it this way. It moves it into a different quadrant, meaning when we play these notes, let's say from a G here, we would have G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So what I'm doing right here is showing that you can circle every single one of the notes on this fretboard that correlates to G major. And when you do, what's laid out in front of you are every possible option onto which you can play these notes. I'm going to zoom just by moving this thing. Is that a little better? This is what we would consider the way to have a little bit of fretboard recognition. When playing stuff like this, is that a bad angle? Well, that's already me being playing this way. When doing this the way that I play, just very simply, I'm not a extremely proficient. I know how to play patterns like a G major, C major, G major, then a D, G, C, G, D, C. That's a 1-4-5 groove. Being able to go 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 1. We can make more complicated patterns, and then when you play your it's just so much fun. I can't help but jam. The idea is, everything I was doing here was explained in the earlier part of this video. So if you like the concept of knowing what a triad is, 1 through 5, knowing that these two are dyads, a lot of the time I play functionally as dyads. When we play the G and the B, and then we go to the A, and then we get the C, and back, we get the feeling of these patterns arise. So what I'd urge you to do, if you've been playing a little mandolin and you're kind of stuck, take this to heart. Realize you can Google what the word circle fifths is. It'll give you your family of chords, and then you learn those family of chords together. When you learn those family of chords together, try and get the spelling of the key signature. Most of the music in mandolin that I've come in contact with too has a, it's in many different keys, but mostly it's in G major. It's the most common key. I would say the next thing after learning your major is to learn how to play the minor. When you play the minor, it alters the feeling of the chord. We would take a major here, and because this is our key signature, we would flatten the 3, flatten the 6, and then we flatten the 7. Since this is a sharp, I can't just put a flat here. I need to put a natural. That changes my F sharp into an F natural, and when you change all those notes on here, you are altering all of them on your fretboard. G, A, B flat, C, D, E. Ooh, well, G, A, B, C, D, E. Looks as if we would need to have an E flat. Interesting. So our E flat is going to be what? G, A, B, C, D. That's a 5. E flat. And then we have F. That's an E sharp. When we go through this whole thing and change all these notes out, we find that our D sharps are going to be circled, our E sharps are going to be circled, and we no longer play the one that's right after them, which every single time turns into that concept. Did I do them all? I think I did. My colors that aren't black are just horrible. So they're D sharp right here, D sharp right there, E sharp right there, E sharp right there. Yeah, there we go. So a lot of these are going to have the same patterns, and if you notice these patterns, that's what gives you your minor phrasing. So again, the first one was do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The next one, G, A, and now a B flat, C, D, E flat, F natural, and G. So if you can play these patterns off of here, where am I going to stand right here? None of this really works, does it? When you play G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G, be able to know that G, flattening the 3rd right here to our middle finger, nice. 5th with our pinky, and then open with our D, E flat, F natural, and then G. This is our pattern recognition for minor chords, the aforementioned G minor. So, what I'd urge everybody to do is check out this channel, having all the mandolin chords on this channel as your resource. Being able to go through basic folk, country, Celtic music, doing a little bit of research on the history lesson of the mandolin will draw you closer to the instrument you're playing. And remember, you only need like 5 minutes a day to do what we did in the beginning part of this session, to tab out or to put what our 7 notes are in the key of G major. By utilizing the circle of fifths and seeing that the family chords of the C and the D are majors, The A, E, and B are minors, and the F sharp is the diminished. You can move this circle idea around all over and change your fretboard recognition, but all of the names of the frets will always remain the same, unless you have an alternate tuning, but that's not often done in a mandolin. It's usually fixed. It is the most standard type of way of tuning. That way you can see how doing a phrasing in a couple keys changes depending on where you want to be using those notes and for what modus. And if you don't know what a mode is, that's just changing up the arrangement of those 7 silly notes. So rather than having G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, if you start on the F sharp and say, it sounds different to the ear, doesn't it? That's called Locrian. It's a great mode. I use it all the time over diminished chords or minor chords. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this today. I hope it wasn't too much information and that you took away a little something. And if you did, put a thumbs up, subscribe, put something cool in the comment section. Really appreciate that. Again, we're shooting for clocking hours here, so if you have some time, check out our rudiments. It looks like this. It allows you to see note values, those 30-second notes there, and then slowly speed them up so you can start hearing different rhythm patterns. Does that make sense? There's lots of different in there. There's all 40 rudiments. I hope you enjoy them. And if you have time, put it on while you sleep, turn the volume down, and help clock those hours. As soon as we get monetized, we might even start editing some of these videos. But I doubt it. When we're doing these live sessions like on Tuesday, it's from 9 to 10 Hawaiian Standard Time. I really appreciate Jeffrey for you being here, hanging out with us. If you watch this in the future and have a question about any of the stuff that we did here, please put it in the comment section. If I don't know the answer to it, I will ask my teacher and get to you. Some of the common things we talked about today that are your takeaway. The fretboard has notes. If you name them every day, you will understand them. The circle of fifths can be easily Googled and drawn out, so when you close your eyes, you see it in your mind's eye. When going through a key, know that moving your notes over give you a G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F sharp. That F sharp must be present with all of your triads now. Unlike the key of C, it's not just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. It has different notation. When you get to the 4, C, E, G is the same as the key you really know, C major, no sharps, no flats. When you go to the D, you have to add the F sharp, or else you would have a D minor. And there is no D minor in the key of G. We have a major fifth. The sonorities depend on the 2 dyads of the first of the triad. The first 2 make up what diatonically we call the sonority, or the major or minor of the key. And then being able to visualize this on the staff very simply as being the notation that is here are the tablature that you are seeing online. So if you find something that has like 3, 2, 5, 8, maybe rewrite it so it's not number notation. It's actually note notation. And within a matter of weeks, sometimes, I mean, for me it took months, but in a matter of weeks, you will be able to understand how the fretboard directly is correlating with the staff. And then being able to see this as being a tenor instrument allows you to imagine what it would be like to hear different melody patterns. Melody patterns are derived out of these notes, and all music is viewed through the eyes of the major. If that doesn't make sense, please check out the channel, and as I said, come on Tuesdays, ask some questions, hang out with me, and have some fun. I really enjoyed doing this again, as I do on every Tuesday. If you want to check us out on Monday, 9 to 10, I take old songs and we try to rearrange them, show you how to chart them, so you can hand your music to other musicians. Right on. Thanks for being here today. Aloha!